On today's show, it's been a little while, but the Padres did make a move while I was gone, signing Woo-Suk Go from the KBO to be hopefully a dynamic bullpen reliever for the team. Breaking down the signing, what it means, how I feel about him as a pitcher and his capabilities, and then main event, talking about the year in Padres baseball, the best things. Gotta highlight some of the best things that happened in Padres baseball in 2023. So yeah, a lot to talk about. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Padres, your daily San Diego Padres podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of Locked On Padres Podcast, which is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day for Wednesday, January 10th, your second episode of the new spanking year of 2024. As always, I am one of your hosts, today, only host, of this podcast, clearly not always with the most, Javier Reyes. You can follow me on Twitter at Javipeno, JAVIIPENO, or if you want only Padres stuff, at LO_Padres, both accounts. I've been in a little hibernation lately, a little bit of personal stuff. It's all good though, we're back, we're thriving, but we're going to ramp it up again. We're going to start making dumb Padres jokes on my main account, and if you don't want dumb stuff, I also talk about movies and stuff. I recently wrote a bunch of articles for Inverse, video game stuff. If you don't want that, Padres account, and then also go check out Locked On Padres on YouTube to check out my sweet threads, man. I got this Padres jacket, 1969 one that I got for Christmas. So shouts to family and shouts to this jacket. Go check that on YouTube if you'd like. Today's episode, guys, is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. And we're getting started with today's episode, ladies and gentlemen. It's been a while. Again, I was a little bit out of commission for a little bit, but we're going to be back 3 episodes a week. We're still being in off-season mode. There's going to be some changes as well for the show, hopefully, that I think are going to be really exciting and make it more of a fun experience. Going to be more on top of things, hopefully, in this new year. And I'm really excited for it. I think that the Padres, while it was a disaster of a season, there's still a lot to look forward to. And I think that today's episode, it's going to be mostly positive stuff, right? Mostly. Let me repeat, mostly positive stuff. You know what I mean? Like, this was still a tough season in a lot of ways. But still, I'm really excited to break it down. So let's begin first, though, with talking about Woo-Suk Go. This signing happened last week, and I forgot where I was exactly, but when I had heard about it, my initial reaction was, wow, AJ Preller really is having one of the least AJ Preller off seasons that I can remember, frankly. This guy is not a star, obviously, but I am really interested in this signing because I think it means a lot of things in a bunch of different ways. That is the most copy and paste statement to say, but seriously, let's break it down. First of all, in terms of last year, 3-8. He's a reliever, obviously, Woo-Suk Go. He's a reliever, 3-8, 3.68 ERA. He had 15 saves, 59 strikeouts, and 22 walks. It's good for a 1.36 whip, which isn't the most amazing in the world. 232 opponent's batting average in 44 innings. He was basically kind of average in a lot of ways. But I don't think that he's an average player, and we'll get more to that in a second. But most interestingly, dare I say, about all of this, is that the Padres got him for a minuscule, and I mean minuscule fee. He's going to make $1.75 million in the first year of a 2-year deal. 2 years, $4.5 million. He'll make $1.75 this year, and the agreement also includes a mutual option for $3 million for 2026, set against a $500K buyout. Really, really interesting. Really interesting stuff here. I think that this signing is actually a lot more fascinating than people are giving it credit for, frankly, just from based on what I've seen. So here's the thing. Not all of the numbers on him are great. This is a guy who, I just said the 3.68 ERA. He had 4.5 walks on average, and that was the number of walks per 9, I should say, in 2023 in the KBO, which was worse than all but 20 other pitchers with at least 40 innings pitched. The rate was also the second worst of his career, which was 4.97 per innings in 2018, which was back when he was just debuting, right? Like that's when he was just coming up as an 18-year-old and up from 3.12 per innings per nine in 2022. So he's had a recent string of control issues. But when it comes as a whole, this is a guy who definitely has some powerful stuff. I think that is a little bit different from Yuki Matsui in that sense. That Yuki Matsui, I almost like describing him as a reliever that like toys with his opponents. You know what I mean? Like he's messing with them and he's not necessarily overpowering them. I'm not saying that this guy is Garrett Cole or he's a Aroldis Chapman, but Go is a little bit on the other end of the spectrum, which is that, look, he can touch 98 sometimes, 94, 96 on average. He has a curve, and he's got a cutter. Both pitches that have enough velocity that they should play in the major leagues. So again, you might be wondering again, why is it that it was 2 years, 4.5? Because he has been on the downturn. I just mentioned that he has some peripheral stats that were the worst since his 2018 season, which I know doesn't feel like it sometimes if you guys are like me, but that was like 5 years ago. I know it doesn't feel like it feels like 2018 was 2 years ago. Basically 2020 onwards just feels like one blob as far as I'm concerned, but he hasn't been getting better, and I think that the control issues scare people off quite a lot. But I do like the raw kind of talent and stuff that he's working with, and I think that there is other reasons to be excited. He thrived back in 2019 for like a 5-year, like he was good for a while. He posted a KBO best 139 saves from 2019 onward, including a career high 42, while striking out 80 over 60 and 2/3 innings in 2022. That's pretty good. He's an arm that, if you look at Fangraph stats, he misses bats 31.1% in 2023. He can generate ground balls. He can do that. The only thing is question, but command. But I do like that this is a guy who can get whiffs and he can generate ground balls. And also, by the way, doesn't give up that many home runs. Really low, like 0.4 home run per nine that he had. So this is a guy that has its only command. And for me, what I love about all of that I just said is we got Nerban Niebla, man. Let Niebla cook. I've been tweeting it. I've been preaching it from the mountaintops. If there's a guy who can help with control issues, it's this dude. And I think that this is what happened a lot in his tenure in Cleveland. And not to mention recently with the Padres, with guys like Blake Snell, right? Like now, granted, the command issues were still there with Blake Snell, but I don't know if I'd call them command issues as much as just he was inefficient. But it wouldn't matter because he'd strike everybody out. Woo-Suk Go under the Padres umbrella. Recently, Padres pitching and their development there, at least at the major league level, has been quite solid. So I think that if we've got a guy who can touch 98, who can throw a power curve, who can throw a cutter, he's got a decent pitch mix with those three, and he generates a lot of ground balls and gets swings and misses, this is the ultimate buy low situation here with Woo-Suk Go. And I love it. I love it for that exactly. That's why I love this move and might be one of my top 5 favorite moves that Preller's made in a decent amount of time. I know that sounds crazy, but it's true because if you look at those numbers I was talking to you before, the leading the league in saves, 42 while striking out 80 in 2022, all that strikeout rate stuff, like a reliever for 1.75 million this year, considering all of the pricing problems and the budget concerns with the Padres, is a steal. And he's had higher potential before. The reason his market wasn't that great, and I think the KBO is a little bit disappointed because they sometimes get a cut. They get a cut of major league deals, if I'm not mistaken, because he just didn't go for much. But that's because he's been on the downturn lately, and the command issues have scared off a lot of teams. But at his upside, at his peak, this is a guy who probably would have been a much higher valued player coming out of the KBO this year or years past than he ended up being based on this 2-year, $4.5 million contract. And hey, maybe this also hints at, forget the player for a second. I like that this shows that Preller is shifting to bargain bin hunting and feels like it's some self-reflection is going on here, especially when they're already spending plenty. Right, the Padres are still spending a lot on Bogarts and Darvish and Manny and Tatis and all those guys that you're just trying to thin out the edges. And I think this is the way to do it, not just give up more prospects and do all that. So guys, yes, I do often complain about teams that just kick the can down the road and they don't sign stars and they're just trying to go bargain bin hunting. But the Padres are the rare team where I think that it's justified, given that even if they are cutting on payroll, it's not like they're cutting on payroll back to 60 million. there's still going to be a team that's spending around 200, 190 million, around that range. So I'm totally cool with that. And I think it's really exciting. I think it's really exciting that this is just an upside play and retooling the bullpen. I am a fan of some other guys. I've talked about Dylan Floro before. I've talked about Keenan Middleton. Jordan Hicks is out there, but I think he's actually going to be a little bit too high price of an option. I think he's no secret, right? But I like this. You bring in Matsu, you bring in him, and also Jung-Ho Lee is his brother-in-law. And then Ha-Seong Kim also from the KBO. So it's going to be a decent kind of integration here. I know Jung-Ho Lee is on the Giants, but it's just kind of, it's cool. Jung-Ho Lee is his brother-in-law. That's kind of like a fun fact. And Woo-Suk Go, for Go being part of your name, I mean, come on. There's really good nickname potential with this guy. So again, I really like the signing. I know it's not thrilling, but hey, again, the Padres have actually low-key been pretty good at acquiring decent bullpen arms that you don't expect, whether it be replacing closers like Kirby Yates, or it be not re-signing Trevor Rosenthal and instead going the Mark Melancon type of route. Luis Garcia was even good one year. I think that this is good. And I'm curious to see what it means going forward with how the team feels about Robert Suarez, who they gave a big contract to, and they've now, their biggest additions, dare I say, this offseason have been at Matsu and Woo-Suk Go. So that's what's so fascinating to me, is what does it say about Preller and his change in philosophy? And I don't think that this is them quitting. I really don't. I think this is being smarter with where you spend, and it's low risk, very high reward. So I'm all for it. But ladies and gentlemen, that's not the only thing I'm all for. You know what else I'm all for? Well, first of all, talking about happy stuff, which we will be talking about in a second with the best Padres moments of the year. But FanDuel, ladies and gentlemen, we love FanDuel. We've been partnered with them for a decent amount of time now. And let me tell you, the NFL regular season, it's wrapped up. It's good. It's good to go. But there's still time to get in on maybe some playoff action with America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 of 150 buckaroos in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $150 in bonus bets, win or lose. That's right, guaranteed when you place the moneyline bet. Guaranteed. Just like that. They're just giving you money. And that's what you get just for listening to me, listening to my voice. This is what I give you, people. This is what I do. So don't ever say I don't do anything for you. So shout out to FanDuel. The app is easy to use. Excuse me. And there's so many different ways to bet. Live same game parlays. Finding bets in their new Explore tab that you should check out. Parlays in their Parlay Hub. Over-unders, spreads, whatever. They got you covered on all of that. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet a layup or a walk-in touchdown. You know what I mean? So everybody go check that out. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. And just like that, we are back, ladies and gentlemen, here on the Locked On Padres podcast. Be sure to subscribe wherever you get your pods from. Follow me on Twitter at Javapeno or at @LO_Padres. And let's get into the main event. We talked a while about Woo-Suk Go. Very exciting addition. But let's talk about positivity, ladies and gentlemen. And if you're wondering, yes, we're going to do an episode about the worst moments of the year for the Padres. And believe you me, we are going to have plenty to talk about in that jurisdiction. But let's be positive today, guys. So we're just going to talk about some of my favorite things that occurred in Padres baseball this year. So it's not necessarily moments as much as just like good positive developments. Good. It's some things are moments, i.e. a thing that happened on one day, or sometimes there's things that happen throughout. But these are the positives. And also, if I don't name one here that I forgot, because it's totally possible I forgot, again, you're talking to someone who can't get Matt Waldron and Michael Waldron together most of the time, feel free to leave a YouTube comment for some of your favorite things that happened for Padres baseball in 2023, because we are being positive out here, ladies and gentlemen, because sometimes I don't do that enough. Sometimes I don't do it enough. Granted, that's because this was a bad year. But anyway, we're getting too carried away. Let's get into it, guys. Firstly, my first thing I want to talk about for the great developments of Padres 2023 baseball is the day before the season started. Back when we all had hope. You know what I mean? That is my number one favorite moment of the 2023 season of Padres baseball, is when we didn't know what was happening. When all we were doing was being like, yeah, they extended Manny. We got a year of Soto. We've got Tatis coming back. But even when he's not back, our lineup is crazy. And then, oh my gosh, Blake Snell opening day. And they start off by losing to the Rockies. And maybe we should have known from then forward. Maybe we should have known. They lose 7-2 in that game. So that's why I'm saying literally the day before, that mindset of hope was, it was delicious. It was the nectar of the gods, just feeling that sense of optimism before everything started. But in actual things, let's talk about actual things. Actual more tangible moments. But seriously, that would actually be my number one. This season was just a hellscape in a lot of ways. The Mexico City series between the Padres and the Giants. Now, obviously, okay, again, guys, when I do these moments, let me be very clear. This isn't all that exciting in terms of what the end goal was, but let's ignore that and view everything in a vacuum, right? And I think that the Mexico City series was just a lot of fun. And I know that there were some people complaining about it. It's not real baseball. They're playing on the moon. But bottom line is it was still fun. And this is a series that I forgot to look up before. What's it called? That saw a absolute onslaught of runs, and it was fantastic between the Padres and the San Francisco Giants. I just absolutely adored it. I think that there was just so much fun here. 16-11. This is also one of Machado's first blow-up games where he was awesome. They won the second as well, 6-4. Even if the Padres had lost these two games, this might have been on my top list just because it's so weird and ridiculous. And I've made this point a lot of times on the show, but my thing is when it comes to rule changes, when it comes to, let's say, the ghost runner, let's say pitch clock, maybe not pitch clock because that's eternal, but ghost runner, sort of things, whatever rule changes they make, playing every team in the league instead of just your division, the designated hitter, all that stuff. My thing is there are 162 games in the year. I need you to think about how much baseball that is that you're watching, especially if you're diehard watching every day. So I don't mind if we have a couple games where the sliders are just turned all the way up, like using video game speak, right? Like every ball is going all over the place. I think it's fun. It's like the Field of Dreams game. Some people will say, well, it's ruining baseball and it inflates the ERA. Look, if you're a pitcher that has one bad outing in Mexico City and that ruins your entire season, and therefore ruins your contract possibilities, I think that that's a stretch and is a little bit more of a you problem. So don't get me wrong, I do feel bad for the pitchers and whatnot, but for me, I was just watching that like, this is just so chaotically dumb that I love it. And because there are so many games in the year, I think we need chaotic dumb every now and then in the sport of baseball. I think it gives us a little bit more variety. God forbid we have some of that, right? So that's another one. The next one I want to talk about is a little bit less of a dumb thing, but a really smart thing. And that was the Padres going really easy at the trade deadline, with their biggest moves being Scott Barlow, Garrett Cooper, and G-Man Choi. Obviously, they also acquired Rich Hill in the deal and whatnot. But for me, I like this a lot, and I actually think that this is a good long-term one out of the three I've discussed so far, obviously. And that's because the Padres didn't go all in. They didn't get silly. They didn't have... And I think that this means a lot. They didn't have a situation where Preller was like, I know I'm getting fired, so I'm blowing up the farm, even if isn't actually going to help. You know what I mean? And if you watch this team at all this year, I think everyone, if you watch this team, was like, this is not the team to go all in for. And I love that they did that. And I love that they actually still, were also, still trying at the same time. Where they were like, you know what, let's make it that we're not batting Matt Carpenter or Nelson Cruz or Rougned Odor or Brandon Dixon or what have you, like guys, or Jose Zokar, let's give ourselves some options. So they just got solid players in theory in G-Man Choi and Garrett Cooper that you can platoon and use in that DH spot to just not be awful, especially with how Matt Carpenter turned out, right? And one of them decently worked enough, Garrett Cooper, and G-Man Choi, I think I had more hits than him for the Padres last year. So that was really frustrating, but it was just so low risk that I was all for it. I know the Rich Hill thing was rough. I know Scott Barlow wasn't the greatest, but I just love that they basically didn't have to give up too much. I know Jackson Wolf, some people like, I don't think he's all that. I think he's fine and might be a major league long inning reliever at best, but I love that. I love that they didn't force the issue. Because look what happened. They started winning. They beat the Rangers. Remember when they swept the Rangers, the eventual World Series winners? And then they fell apart because that team was so undisciplined and frankly, just the least clutch team I've watched in quite a lot of time. Like, they just refuse to win. Then I'm glad that Preller said, you know what, I'm going to make additions. We're going to try and get these players here that could help us. And if they don't work, then it's okay because we didn't overcommit for this year, and we'll figure it out in the offseason. So I think that was a tremendous development and a really good moment for Preller. The next thing we got to talk about is another really positive one that you might have forgot. Fernando Tatis Jr. hitting a home run at Petco and the crowd going absolutely nuts. He had been going through a really bad slump. In fact, I would say that his whole season, when it came to his bat, was a bit of a slump. 113 WRC plus paled in comparison to his career, like 150, WRC plus MVP numbers that he was able to put up. But for me, I think that moment is one of my actual genuine favorites of the year. And the reason why is because it showed you how much potential this team has. And what I mean by that is not potential in terms of winning, but potential in terms of being important and being exciting and just being a lovely story, right? This guy, in August, when this team is basically by then all but it feels like eliminated, it just hadn't officially happened yet, hits a home run in a game and everyone goes nuts because they love Tatis so much. And it also served as a reminder that, like, all this fan base was asking for all year was just a little bit of hope. You know what I mean? Imagine if they were above 500 team. Imagine how they'd be acting with all those sellouts and the fact, again, I understand fans. Now, don't be mean to the guys. Don't be tweeting at them and Instagram posting them. That's dumb, right? Like, don't be doing that. But I feel for fans who are like, man, you guys just didn't show up at all. You know what I mean? And then the one time they did, they lose their minds. And I thought that was just like a really beautiful moment in a lot of ways because it showed you the city of San Diego really deserved more, particularly amongst Padres fans and the people at Petco. They deserve more. Because if that's how they're going to react to a random home run when you're basically out of it for a guy who hasn't had that best grade of a season at the plate, and it's not like he was chasing some home run record or trying to hit a certain number, that's amazing to me, right? Like, that's just amazing. So shouts to Petco fans. You guys rule. Next moment, ladies and gentlemen, we're getting into the real good stuff. Let me tell you, we're getting into the good stuff, ladies and gentlemen. You might have forgotten this one. Let's talk about another home run. In fact, two. David Dahl's game-tying home run in the 9th against the Diamondbacks, and then Ha-Seong Kim's walk-off. Love this one. It was really fun. It was just random for David Dahl to do that. I know David Dahl had like a season or two with the Rockies where he was decently effective, but it was also for the Rockies, and as we all know, they hit in a pretty nice, friendly hitter's ballpark, but it was really nice. David Dahl, basically, he gets hurt like 2 days after this, so that was really unfortunate. But I'm just glad that the guy had a moment. Game-tying home run when least expected. Diamondbacks had a weird bullpen issue, especially at the beginning of the year, before they made some moves at the deadline. And then you have Ha-Seong Kim walk it off. Who better? I mean, really, who better? And also, kind of, dare I say, encapsulate the Padres season. Place unlikely source at Ha-Seong Kim. Meanwhile, it would be like the amount of times we watched, runner on first, nobody out, and then it would be like Bogarts, Manny, Tatis, Soto coming up, and then the runners wouldn't even move up. Crazy, right? But then we had a lot of moments like this, and this was probably the apex of that, with the tie from David Dahl and then the walk-off from Ha-Seong Kim, who we all love very, very much, and will always love very, very much, no matter what the future has in store for him. But ladies and gentlemen, before we continue down the list and close this one out, I just want to take 1 second, a little bit of a break. So, drink your water, maybe use the bathroom, whatever you need. Intermission period, if you will. Just a few words from some of our sponsors. And just like that, we are back, ladies and gentlemen, here on the Locked On Padres podcast. Oh, it's a good episode, in my opinion. I hope you guys are enjoying it right now. What do you think? You think you're enjoying it? Say it out loud to yourself. Are you enjoying this episode? Yes. No? Okay. Just get that out, guys. Let's keep talking about best moments. Let's do it. Next one I want to talk about is one that is really subjective, I think is the word, because I was at the game, and that's Juan Soto's absolute nuke bomb missile Oppenheimer quality nuclear Kamehameha spirit bomb Rasengan shot at Citi Field. And I was there, and it was awesome. It hits like the bridge thing. The people might not know how Citi Field looks, but there's kind of like this bridge in center fields, kind of, or it's just like a little ode to the city, making it feel a little bit more developed as a park. It's just a nice little feature, and it clangs off of that thing. And in the ballpark, it was an amazing feeling. First of all, because like I said, I was there, and then just the silence of Mets fans. They just went, oh, you know what I mean? Like it's underrated home runs in opposing people's ballparks that are absolute like nukes. You know what I mean? It's underrated, like hearing everyone go like, oh, the Mets are, hey! And then you just hear immediately off the crack of the bat, oh. You know what I mean? It's not cheering. They're like, oh no, oh dear. I am in danger. You know what I mean? That's kind of the vibes of it, and I love that. And don't get me wrong, the Padres ended up losing that game, which is, yep. Soto miscues in the outfield, team not hitting with runners on. Yep, that's the Padres. But it was still really fun, and I also got to sit in a booth and have some really good food too. So that was really fun. So again, a little bit subjective for me, but even still from people at home, that bomb was awesome. Especially when Soto, I think at that point, had not fully been going going beast mode just yet. So it was really cool to see him do that. So shouts to him. Now for a couple of really silly ones that I want to get into really quickly. Nick Martinez revealing that Ha-Seong Kim talks crap in Spanish. Just one of my favorite things that happened this year. Truly. I loved it. It was so much fun. And I think that, yes, I'm biased as a Puerto Rican lad. I love that. But I just find that hilarious. And it just only adds on to my love for Ha-Seong Kim. And I hope it does too, that he talks back in Spanish. So shouts to Kim. That's amazing. Love him so much. And I know this wasn't this year, but I also loved when Manny spoke to him in Korean. Just really good stuff. I love that that's like just the guy. You know what I mean? And I am worried there has been, and I haven't talked about this yet on the show. The one thing about trading Ha-Seong Kim, I would worry about potential locker room fallout because it seems like everyone gets along with him. And I think that stuff is important, especially in a locker room that we're not always convinced doesn't hate each other. You know what I mean? I'm convinced that like at least someone hates each other there. That's what it feels like, because it's just, we keep getting reports about a weird locker room. We just keep getting that. Or clubhouse, whatever you want to, whatever terminology. My bad. I was just watching basketball. So we'll see. We'll see how that pans out. And I know that Dennis Lin recently reported that there's been widespread interest in him, and the Padres have been potentially trying to trade him for weeks. You yelled at me about me and Ben, Locked On Giants host, proposing trades, but I'm just saying, Lamont Wade Jr., get another prospect for him. Wade can play outfield and first base. I don't hate it. But, ladies and gentlemen, one thing that I certainly don't hate is more good vibes, ladies and gentlemen. And the next one I want to talk about is the first of two Blake Snell things, and that is Blake Snell's booth interview. First of all, he did a bunch this year, and I would say in general, Padres baseball, this would also have been true in 2022 and 2021. His booth interviews are always a blast, and who knows if they'll be back. Blake Snell still hasn't signed yet, which is wild, and because it really stinks that baseball is 3 to 4 week wait periods for guys to get signed. Meanwhile, we're probably going to be in the Super Bowl by the time Blake Snell signs. You know what I mean? It's just ridiculous, and it just shows you that why baseball lags behind the interest level of other sports. But anyway, not to get on my soapbox. Specifically, the one that I loved was his interview about WRC Plus. The clip went a little bit viral. Snell just being like, why do they call it WRC Plus? And then, Orsillo and Mud, you're just like, yeah, this is why it's weighted and this and that. He's like, yeah, but why the plus? And when he said that, I was like, man, like, not to sound super obnoxious or anything, but I cover baseball a lot, obviously, and I just heard that and I was like, you know what? You make a good point, man. Why do we say plus? And why do we call the stats this way? Why didn't we come up with cooler sounding names, or at least simplified, more mainline, streamlined stats? Call it hitter rating or something like that. Like, isn't it weird that we don't have that? You know what I mean? It's like, imagine if the NFL had for air yards per target, which basically means how far you threw the ball in the air, not how much the pass went for, because the receiver might have taken it. Imagine if air yards per target, it was called like APP plus. You know what I mean? It's like, actually, why didn't we just call it something a little bit cooler? You know what I mean? Or a little bit more fun. Quarterback rating. That's a great example. Instead of QBR, they called it, end zone spin plus. You get my point. But like, I thought Blake Snell made a great point. So that was a really nice vibe one for sure. And the next sort of cutesy fun one that I want to talk about. Oh man, it's nice. It's really nice. Gary Sanchez's initial surge. I would argue the entirety of his tenure with the Padres was awesome, because I think that him combined with Campusano was just a sight to behold, and it was a really unexpected sight to behold, at least on the Gary Sanchez side of things. But his initial start, which was over the course of, let's see here. Let me see if I could find this. How many games was it? How many games? I don't know how many games it was. 13. 13 games. Gary Sanchez, his first 13 games with the Padres. This is a guy that the Mets also let go. Slash 255, 300 with a 681 slugging percentage. That is good for a 160 WRC plus. He had 6 home runs. In the second game, he hit a home run as well. He had an RBI. Then he had 3 RBIs the next day with a home run and scoring 2 runs himself. It was just so random, and I think there's something very beautiful about this Padres team being one that I talked about how the pitching development has excited me at the major league level. But when it comes to batters, sorry to repeat this for the 12th time for longtime listeners, but when you get to the Padres, batters either stay the same or they get worse. And it's really funny that one of the exceptions to that rule was Gary Sanchez, especially if you know his tenure in New York. A little bit of a weird vibe with him, the Kraken, weird dumb mistakes that he makes behind the plate sometimes. It's just kind of beautiful that it's him of all people. A little bit of a goober. And he still has one of my favorite quotes regarding the Astros scandal when he was asked about Altuve and said, hey, if that was me, I would have taken everything off. Like all my clothes off. He's a funny guy, I think, in his own way. So Gary's surge with the Padres and somewhat career revitalization, that was really cool. But now, ladies and gentlemen, let's get into the big ones. You know they're coming. Every single one that I'm about to say, you know. You know it's coming. First of all, Ha-Seong Kim. Already mentioned him with the smack talk in Spanish. His entire season, frankly, culminating in a Gold Glove, culminating in him increasing his viability as an overall starter in the sport, being a guy who saw many more pitches in the leadoff spot, being a guy that increased his walk rate, being a guy that low-key stole how many bases, listeners? I want you to answer yourself before I say it. How many bases did he steal? You remember? 38. 17 home runs, which isn't a ton or whatnot. Maybe he did get a little bit lucky. And yes, the WRC plus increase overall wasn't ginormous, went from 106 to 112, but the walk rate was a huge improvement. And if not just for a randomly awful like September that just ruined his overall, WRC plus and numbers, he was awesome this year. One of the top 20 position players in baseball for much of the season. Incredible stuff. And of course, the vibe's immaculate. So just the entirety of Ha-Seong Kim's season, I think, was amazing. Another player that the entirety of their season was amazing is Luis Campusano, and that's another thing for Padres baseball that we should not forget. Gary was nice, but Luis Campusano was even better, and it showed you this is why it's good to have some backup soldier prospects. Not because I thought Luis Campusano was going to be a superstar, but because I figured give the kid a try. We have Austin Nola playing every day, who we end up figuring out has an eye issue, and if you give these guys a chance, you might get some cool stuff, which is why I'm excited that since they have the star level power to compound it, because that's the thing. I don't like only having prospects. That's the kick the can down the road stuff that a lot of teams do. When you have stars, let the young kids play. Because Luis Campusano was awesome this year. 1.1 F4 because he didn't play quite enough games, only 49, but 319, 356, 491 slash line, 134 WRC plus. He immediately, if this keeps up, is one of the 3 best hitting catchers in Major League Baseball. That's insane. That's the same. 7 home runs to go with that as well. He did great. And I was shouting for so long about this guy, and it was the only thing I got right in 2023 was that I was super optimistic about Campusano, and I believed just give him a chance. Yes, he has some defense to work on, but with the acquisition of Kyle Higashioka, I think that could be a nice veteran presence, and he can iron out the kinks. That way, at the minimum, he's just not a liability defensively, because he did make some defensive miscues, but I guess the moment to sum it up would be me being right about Luis Campusano. Do not give up on these guys, especially for a guy who, just because people would comment on my channel and even DM me on some occasions saying, why do you keep loving Luis Campusano so much? Is this all a bit? Because when they called him up, he hit below 100. I'm like, agreed, but he never should have been called up. And every time they called him up, they'd send him down after one bad game or bench him even after a good game. I think that they mismanaged him, and I'm glad that it finally turned out well. So that's one of my favorite things in 2023 Padres baseball. And ladies and gentlemen, we've got 2 more. We've got 2 more. And you know what they are. You know what they are. Number 1 of the 2. It is. I don't know why I'm being so dramatic. Sorry. It is Blake Snell's Cy Young Award. This guy was amazing. I recommend everyone go check out Just Baseball. Obviously, I'm biased there. I write for them as well. I'm a part of their network. But go check that out. Colby Olson wrote a great article breaking down just the comparisons between him and former players, Bob Gibson being one of them, and how this was a unique Cy Young season because of all the walks, but the fact that he was striking out more guys, and that his stretch when he really won the Cy Young was better than almost everyone. For like, I think it was like for 15 straight starts, his ERA and everything was the lowest of any 15 start stretch of anyone since Bob Gibson. And the third one, the one right behind Snell, was Jake Arrieta. I think a lot of people might remember Jake Arrieta's because that ends up being huge in helping the Cubs, build their team, and then they win the World Series. So I think people remember that torrent stretch. Blake Snell's was even better than that, with the strikeout rate, with the low ERA. Then he gets his second Cy Young. It was a blast watching him this year. It was a blast hearing his talks on the network. And if this was his last year with the Padres, then hey, he went out on a high note. And even more just for Padres stuff, they won the trade, right? Like they gave up Luis Patino, who they then picked up, by the way. I forgot to mention that. They then picked him up recently. You got a Cy Young out of that trade. So don't get me wrong. I have issues with AJ Preller. I do think that they could have and should have moved on, but he is not someone that I'm like, wow, we will never win. Or more importantly, wow, this is the worst in the sport. There's much worse out there, guys. Go ask how the Mariners fans are doing. You know what I mean? I think that's a little bit more ownership related, but hey, at least he's good at some things. Every now and then he hits it out of the park with a trade, and he's also good at eyeing for talent with the farm system, clearly, very evidently so. So that's exciting, and Blake Snell Cy Young was awesome. I loved it. And the last thing I want to talk about, which I think is my overall favorite thing that happened in 2023 Padres baseball. Some won't call it a surprise. I do, because I don't like chalking these things up to peripherals, because you don't know if someone's going to translate that well there. But Fernando Tatis Jr. winning the Platinum Glove. This is good for a bunch of reasons. One, because again, I don't like assuming how these things are going to turn out. But for you to win a platinum and not just the gold, when you were a shortstop for this team and you transitioned to the outfield, that's not easy. That takes a lot of, frankly, realization. What's the term? Like kind of accepting the reality of the situation, which is that Kim's the better shortstop right now defensively. So we're going to put him here, and you're not exactly a little bit in the doghouse with us over your actions. And for you to rebound and be that successful, that proficient of a defender is just, I was in awe. I was in awe of Tatis all year. Whether it be the outfield assists and the cannon of an arm throwing people out, whether it be his ability to track the ball, he was up there, one of the best, if not the best defenders in the sport. And I know a lot of Padres fans have complained a lot about how Nolan Arenado keeps winning over Manny Machado. Deservedly so, in my opinion. But again, they complain about him a lot sometimes. And my thing is, I think it's beautiful that they finally broke the streak of Arenado with Tatis. I just think it's beautiful, and I think that it's a really exciting development. If the Padres decide to mix and match around and move in the center field, I wouldn't hate it, but I'd prefer to keep him in a position where we've already seen where he's done well, as opposed to center field. But again, we'll have to see how that pans out for the rest of the offseason, guys. So again, I'm going to repeat my favorite things in Padres baseball for 2023, the literal day before the season started, and we had hope. Blake Snell's Cy Young winning campaign. So specifically when he won the Cy Young. Everything about Luis Campusano, basically Luis Campusano finally being given a shot. Fernando Tatis Jr. winning the Platinum Glove. The fact that they didn't overcommit at the trade deadline. The Mexico City series. Everything Ha-Seong Kim, including the Gold Glove. Tatis getting that one random homer in August and Petco going absolutely nuts, seeing him break his slump. Blake Snell's booth interview about WRC+. Gary Sanchez's initial surge. David Dahl's game-tying homer in the ninth against the D-backs, followed by Ha-Seong Kim's walk-off home run right after that. And by the way, that was against the D-backs. Just goes to show you. If you were a D-backs fan when that happened, you're probably miserable. Just goes to show you, they made the World Series. Not over. Juan Soto's bomb at Citi Field. And then Nick Martinez revealing that Ha-Seong Kim talks smack in Spanish. If you have any moments or favorite things from the 2023 season in Padres baseball, please leave a comment, send me a DM, whatever. Love to hear from you. There's probably something that I missed, whether it be a small one or even a big one. Please give me your thoughts, because while this was a bad season, it's behind us. We put it in the rear view, and there was still some really cool stuff that happened this year, and you shouldn't totally give up. You shouldn't. You just shouldn't. Don't totally give up, man. Don't give up, man. Don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do it. And with that all being said, that about does it for today's edition of the Locked On Padres podcast, the only pod that may be better than the Padres themselves. For future episodes, we're going to be talking about the worst moments in Padres history. We're also going to be doing an off-season report card, grading each move that the Padres had made, from Woo-Suk Go to the Juan Soto trade to Mike Schilt, everything that they've done so far, with a special guest that I'm waiting to confirm a time to record with. Going to be doing worst moments. We're going to be talking about the remaining free agents that are still out there that I think are interesting. Maybe do a couple of New Year's resolutions for the Padres in 2024 that I think fans should abide by. And then also talking about whatever new signing and move that they make, because I don't think they're done. And I think that's exciting. I really do. But don't expect like crazy moves. You know what I mean? But I still think they're exciting. And with all that being said, ladies and gentlemen, until next time, stay safe, and of course, stay faithful. My Friar Faithful homies, take care.